You lead your team. Let's talk about it. The Lead Your Firm podcast. Lessons in leadership from advisors who live it every day. Hosted by Daren Blonski, Managing Principal at Firmata Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Contents are for educational purposes only. Nothing herein amounts to investment advice or an offer to buy or sell securities. The Lead Your Firm podcast starts now.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Firm. We have got a good friend of mine from Parallel Financial with us today, Brian Boughner. He's going to talk to us all about his journey and leading his firm. What's unique about Brian is Brian doesn't just run a firm that serves clients, but he also runs a firm that serves advisors. So you get to see that leadership journey through two different lenses today as we talk. So without spoiling it for you, Brian, tell us about yourself. Tell us about Parallel Financial. Where are you guys based? What do you do? How do you do it? And what's Fiduciary Alliance?
Sure. Brian Boughner. I live in the wonderful, wonderful city of Greenville, or as we like to say down here, Greenville, South Carolina. It is, I've been here about 15 years now. It's a great place. And about 10 years ago, my business partner and I, we were actually at a regional bank. And as you well know, Daren, 2008 changed a lot in our business.
Indeed, it did.
And the bank that we were at, we were in their trust wealth department, and a lot of things started changing where we just weren't, like we were being asked to do things. I mean, not bad things, but clearly things that were not in the best interest of our clients. Mm-hmm. And so my business partner and I, we said, we can do this a lot better. We can charge a heck of a lot less and save our clients money. And we can, and we can actually keep more of it for ourselves, which is, a good thing too.
Which is actually a really honest comment.
Yeah.
Brian, because a lot of advisors won't even admit that, yeah, it's actually better for the client and the advisor.
Yes. Yeah. It was, we just started looking, it's like, wait a minute, this, so 10 years ago, this last March, I like to call it, we had our Jerry Maguire moment where we just, we came in on a Friday and resigned. And we said, all right, who's with me? And we spent that day and that weekend just making calls and meeting with folks. And, leaving from a bank to start your firm's a little different. It's not like it's your book of business and you just get your clients transported over. There's a lot of other hands and folks in there and things like that. And so it wasn't like we had this established book of business that we started with. We really started on day one with zero. And so anyway, it took, it took us a while and it was a lot of work and a lot of there, but, we obviously 10 years later, we're still here and so thankful and blessed that we made that move. And so anyway, it's been a good move for us. When we left, we went with an aggregator, which is, a firm that says, hey, you can come in, like we branded as Parallel from day one, but like we'll take care of a lot of stuff in the background for cut of your fees and all this other kind of stuff. We're like, great, we don't have to deal with that. We just want to go out and get clients and things like that. And this firm was also starting out as well. And there were a lot of challenges with this firm. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the things that they were supposed to deliver for us, they really weren't delivering, and they were in a different city. And and we ended up having to do a lot of stuff ourselves and learning it. So it was like all the stuff we were paying them to do, we were kind of figuring out on our own. So after about 3 years with them, we stepped away and truly went on our own. But we structured it in a way because we said, we see the value in somebody wanting to go independent, not wanting to deal with the regulatory stuff or compliance or custodians or all these other things, but really just focus on, I want to get my clients, I want to, business development, things like that. But they don't want to deal with that other stuff. So we saw the value in that. So we structured our firm that way where we kept Parallel, but then we created the Fiduciary Alliance. We sat on it for about 4 years, didn't really do anything with it. We just kind of wanted to really make sure we had all of our pieces covered and everything like that. And about 3 years ago, we onboarded our first advisor into Fiduciary Alliance. And since then we've done 8 onboards. From Boston to Minneapolis to Austin, Texas to St. Augustine, Florida, and we're kind of somewhat in the middle of all that here in Greenville, South Carolina. So, yeah.
And where did most of the advisors come from, Brian?
Well, we've done zero marketing, so it's all been word of mouth, referrals, relationships, things like that at this point. So we're we're thinking about kind of kicking off a bit of some marketing stuff here for the very, very first time. But at this point, it's been all word of mouth. Because again, it's a tall order when somebody's making, because again, we were on the other side of it, right? We made this move, right? So probably the biggest move you're going to make in your career is to go independent, right? And you want to make sure it's not like you get a second chance. It's like, well, I messed that one up. Let me go ahead and do it again. You got to get that right. And so we just want to make sure we're going to get this right, and we're going to do it right for our folks. So we've been kind of just, really taking our time with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that's we've heard the origination story of Parallel Financial and Fiduciary Alliance. Tell us about your leadership journey, Brian. Where did you start? When did your first moment, if you think back in your life and you're like, oh, I learned what leadership was in this moment, what was that moment for you?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say, my senior year of high school, I was the drum major of the band, and that was kind of that was I'd say one of the first moments where I really felt like, okay, things I'm doing and saying actually matter here. I'm not just that guy, that funny guy in the corner cutting up anymore. I actually have to do some.
Were you
stuff.
like the class clown most of your life, Brian?
I've always tended towards humor. Humor's always been one of these things, and unfortunately, and this is something I've had to learn hard as a leader. I trended towards critical humor, which when you're with your buds and with your friends and you're cutting up, that's great. But I crossed that line a lot of times with folks, and there's a lot of damage control that I had to do through the years where, that was funny, Brian, but what you just, the damage you just caused there was not good.
That's funny, but you're dead to me, buddy.
yeah, seriously. And I still struggle. I still to this day, it's something I'm always having to check myself with, just from years and years of doing that. I graduated college with a marketing degree, and then I went and spent 5 years in full-time ministry as a youth pastor. So I would say my first real meaningful taste of leadership was, here I was, and I graduated college early. I graduated at 20. I was 20 years old. It took me 3 years to get my degree.
You're one of those. You're one of the.
I had like high school credits. I went full time. Well, when you're paying for college, you get really motivated to get done with it quick. Now it was a lot cheaper back then, but so here I was 21 years old, and I'm leading a high school and middle school youth group at a church. And I got to say, that was really my first, okay, it's serious now, right? These are people's lives. So I would say that's probably my first real taste of it.
Interesting. So if I were to say define leadership for me, Brian, now it's a big philosophical question. How would you define it?
I'm a firm believer that you can only lead people where you've been. And if you don't take the time to lead yourself into those areas or what you want to do, then people can smell BS pretty darn quick. And you may be genuine about it, or this or that, or hey, I'm leaning there. But if you're not actually jumping through those same hoops, doing the same things that you're trying to lead people to do, people can spot it like that, and you're done. And so, again, we're both entrepreneurs, right? And so we're always trying to get to the next level. We're always trying to figure out, okay, how do we grow? What do we do? How do we improve here? We're always trying to figure this stuff out. And we're also leading organizations. And I'm a firm believer that you have to lead yourself there. Like when you think about, if you're here and you want to get here, we start looking at the organization and looking at all this other stuff and doing and it's like, nope. First thing you got to do is, who do you need to be and who do you need to become to get where you want to be? That's where you need to start before you even start, because it's so easy, right? It's so easy to start spotting in other people like, well, we need more of this and this person needs to do less of that, and we need to lead this and that, and I need to challenge them here and maybe encourage them over here. It's so easy to look out, but it's always like, no. Pull the mirror out. What do you need to be and who do you need to be to get where you need to go, and work on that. And then let that be the foundation as you start to lead other people.
And you bring up such a critical point. There's a author and a executive coach that wrote this book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And I can sympathize with that journey. And it's this constant.
I'm writing that down, by the way. That's what I'm doing.
It's a good one. And if I could remember his name in the minute, I would tell you. I don't remember it in 5. So Marshall Goldsmith.
Okay.
Yes, Marshall Goldsmith. What got you here won't get you there. And
Right.
I find that one of the most challenging aspects of leadership, right? It's like, how do you become what you need to be to get to the next level?
Right.
Which is so amorphous and so clouded and shrouded. You don't really know. And so you clamor around looking for mentors, support team. What do I need to know? Who's going to give me the feedback? And for me, I have 3 different coaching orgs that I work with because of that, because I'm constantly trying to infiltrate my brain with stuff that like, okay, I got to do this differently.
Right.
But more importantly, and I was actually thinking about this last night at 12:30, driving my kids and family back home from Montana. For whatever reason, I was thinking about this, but it's like, how do you embody the feeling of being a leader? And how do you make that internal shift? Because I think that's the biggest challenge. Tell me about experience.
Yeah.
In your
So,
journey.
right. So you bring up a great point. So I think there's a few ways, right? Let's talk the first way. I mean, to me, the most ideal way is you get a really good mentor. You get somebody to say, hey, I've been down this road. Let me show you what you need to do. I personally have had horrible mentors and and very few, if even. And so that's not been a place that that I've had a lot of success in. And quite honestly, I do think it's hard to find really good mentors to do that. And
to your point, real quick, let me interrupt. The whole mentor thing, I don't understand. I've never been able to really lock that one in.
Well, I mean, I think the idea is that you find somebody that has blazed that path, right?
Mm-hmm.
And typically they need, right? They probably going to be older than you, more experience than you, and willing to pour into you through that. And then you basically, I think you just go to that person and say, hey, I'm trying to get to kind of where you've been. Are you willing to invest into me to get there? And whether you pay them or whatever that is, if we want to call it coaching, mentoring, I mean, I think a lot of these terms sometimes just get intertwined in there, but there's a lot of coaches out there who they're not financial advisors, right? And they've not done this before. They offer a ton of value and they can coach and they can help and they can do those things. But I think a mentor is someone who's like, I've been down this road and I'm going to help you avoid a lot of the mistakes that I made. There's not a market for that. There's just not a lot of people willing to do that. I think that's few and far between, but you read about it, you hear about it, like find a mentor, get a good mentor, get a mentor, get a mentor. And it's like, where, or who, So I think the best thing for that in place of that is like accountability or like what's the word I'm trying to say, like when having
accountability partner.
What was that?
Like an accountability partner? Is that
or group? I think having some type of group of folks that are doing the same thing that you're doing, where you develop that trust, you develop those things, and that you can then go say, hey, I'm trying to get here, or I'm trying to do this, or I'm faced with this challenge. And you've got folks in the same room or in the same group with you that you trust, that you, that there's open lines of communication and great, and that you respect as well. That's obviously important. I think that's the next best thing to help you get to where you go. Because look, I mean, and again, I've youth pastored, I'm a spiritual guy. I don't believe that we're called to be islands by any means. And I think there's a lot of people that have this idea, like, I'm this great leader and I'm this island and I've got my stuff figured out and I'm going to do it. And I find that is going, I don't think that leads to a lot of success. You've got to get around folks that are like-minded, and because there are things, it's like that parable of Jesus where he says, hey, take the 2x4 in your own eye before you start worrying about the speck in somebody else's eye. Right. There's you got stuff in your eye that needs to get cleared out, and you need someone to help you do that.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I love that saying, we're not called to be islands. Yeah. And when you look at the nature of humans, like humans are fundamentally social beings, right? It's that old psychology research project where they put this poor little girl in a room and didn't give her any social interaction. She just cracked.
Well, right? we all went through that social project a few years ago, if you remember, right?
That's right.
It was called social distancing.
Yeah.
I personally, and look, I'm an introvert. I know it may seem, but I'm actually deep down, I'm an introvert. But when that happened, man, I went into like a mini depression, and it was really, really tough for me.
Yeah.
But no, we're not built that way. God did not make us that way at all.
Yeah. The only thing that saved me during that time was training for a marathon. I ran, actually for an ultra marathon.
You were Forrest Gump, man. You just
ran.
took off running.
I'm just gonna go run. I don't know what's going on out there, but I'm gonna run.
But by the time they reopened back up, you had a beard down to your belly, didn't you? Just and long hair from all the running
shorts, crazy looking hat, beard. Took me a while to come back from that, but we made it.
Yeah,
arguably. So well, that's interesting. So it sounds like a lot of your leadership journeys come from your faith and from your church and your walk with Christ there. How has that played into your work as running a firm and owning a firm and working with people?
So I'd say there's two factors here that are unique in terms of running parallel and fiduciary. First of all, I have a business partner, and we're 50-50 on everything we do here. He is yin to my yang. We are night and day. We are the most opposite people on the planet. And people that know us both say the same thing. We are not. And so one thing, it's great. And this kind of gets, again, like we have two completely different skill sets, right? The things that he's amazing at, I'm horrible at. Things he's horrible at, I'm amazing at. And it actually took us a while to trust each other and be able to really release, like, okay, that's your deal. You go do that. I support you. I do that. And it has helped a bit. I feel like exponentially, it has put us in a place much better than if it was just one of us driving the ship, because there's only so many things you can be good at, right? Now you can hire people in. Now what's challenging about a 50-50 partnership, of course, is that I have a second marriage. I mean, let's just be honest about it, right? Like,
that's what I was gonna say. Is like when people see you opposite, it's like, how'd you two get married?
Yeah, it's exactly right. But I mean, it somehow works in marriage and in business partnerships too. So, but it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and we've had our peaks, we've had our valleys, we've had a lot of ups and downs along the way. So I'd say that part has been key. The second thing that has been key, and this is really something I want to say maybe in the last few years we figured out, and I wish we had figured this out a lot sooner, is that we now go above and beyond to really establish a great culture here. And the longer I've been doing this, and the more I do this, I really believe that culture trumps a lot of things. Like, there's a lot of things that you can try to do to lead or motivate or whatever, but if you can establish a positive, good culture in your organization, and it is a bit of an amoebic thing. It's not like there's I was gonna say,
define culture for us, because I think so many people get confused by that word. Define culture, and then what does that mean to you?
Yeah, because I think, well, let me say this and then I'll answer your question. Because I think when people think culture, right, they think about, oh, well, am I supposed to be like Google and have like things where people can get their macchiatos and play this and that, have fun and this and that or whatever? Like, no, that's not necessarily a great culture either. It's figuring out an environment where people want to come in, and they want to be in, and they want to be a part of this, and they're trying to strive for that. So, I mean, first and foremost, it starts with compensation, right? We don't work for free. People don't get up in the morning and go to work. You have to create a compensation structure that your folks absolutely are engaged and want to do better and come better and come in every day and do better. That it starts there. And then I think after that, to your point, it is a bit amoebic, because everybody's team is different. People are different. You have to really figure out, what is it they like? What do they want? What motivates them? What drives them? I know you're a big disc person. You've done a lot of great work on the disc side. We put our whole team through it. And for like 3 months, every week, we would just go as a team, we'd go through someone's disc profile and really understand what makes them tick, what's important to them. But again, I just think it's just, there's no easy answer to that question. And then it's the other part of that question too, that we get into now, right? Is I really feel like for the first time in a long time, I would say that with boomers, Xers, millennials, and now Zers coming on the scene. You've got 4 groups. Well, I would say boomers and Xers seem to always we always understood each other and could kind of figure things out along the way. And then the millennials came along and kind of blew that up. And then the Zers are like, hold my beer. We're gonna take this even further, right?
Yeah.
And so there's that aspect of it that even just this last year, I've done a lot of research in and study in to really understand, because we have right now on our team, we just have millennials and Xers. I think we have 1 Zer on our team. But even that millennial Xer thing has been really tough to figure out, because I'm motivated. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make as leaders is we project what motivates us and what we just project that onto our organization. Right.
Such a good point.
And I think that right there will mess you up more than anything.
Yeah, that's so valuable. We project what we think onto our organizations. And I mean, isn't that the pinnacle of emotional intelligence, is to learn how to step back from that projection? And so critical in your role, and especially with this intergenerational collide. Early on in my career, I did a lot of work with generational work, and this lady was in my office who wrote a book called When Generations Collide. And I'm not convinced yet, though. Let me just say this. I'm not convinced that generations are the issue. I'm more convinced that it's life stage that's the issue. So if you've got kids, a mortgage, and you're a busy job, you're going to behave differently than the Gen Zer who's got no kids, no mortgage, and this is their first job.
I'm going to still push back on that a little bit, because I think how we spend our adolescence matters, and how you and I spend our adolescence compared to how Zers and not all millennials, I'd say the later millennials spent their adolescence, I just think we're not completely night and day. And I think that I agree. At the end of the day, when you're married and you have a kid and you got responsibilities, you got to do things. But I still think what motivates you is different. I do. What
would you say between the groups is the difference between motivations, like a baby boomer versus Xer versus millennial Z?
Well, I'll talk about, look, the boomers, they're on their way out, right? I mean,
the boomers ruin the world. So if we can get over that, then they put us all in debt.
Exactly. I think the main thing I'd say the main struggles today are between Xers and millennial, and your later millennials. I actually learned there's Zennials, which is like a cross between an Xer and a millennial. But anyway, I would say that
Brian, I'm a Zennial. Okay.
You're a Zennial. Okay.
Yeah. They call it cuspers too.
Okay. You were born after 1980.
I was born on 1980.
Oh, you're
It's debatable.
I'd say you're an Xer, but okay. Well, here are the 2 main differences that I see, without a doubt. The first is I think in terms of outlook, our generation was taught that you go pay your dues. Like, you go pay your dues. That might mean you work a crap job. There's going to be a time where, like, it's not fun, but you got to go do that to get where you want. Like, you got to do the things you don't want to do to get the things you want. And I think with some of these other, that concept is so foreign to them. They're like, no, I'm educated. I got educated in this. I've got my degree. I've got this. So now I should be able to perform that job or perform that thing at a great compensation. So I think that's one. And I think the second thing is our generation, when we grew up, I remember I'd come home from, right? We were the latchkey kids, right? I'd come home from school. Both my parents were working. Nobody, people weren't home. I'd let myself in. I made myself dinner sometimes at night if my parents had things going on, or I had to go here or there or wherever. Like, I was taught at an early age to be very self-sufficient. Whereas I think now, right, kids are in soccer and basketball and sports and dance and music and stuff. So they literally they go to school, then they go to this activity, then that activity, then this activity and that activity. Then they're coming home, getting their homework done, eating dinner, going to bed, and do it all over again. They're not really taught, I think, a lot of that self-sufficiency thing that I think our generation went through. And I think that, and then you throw in electronics on top of that, right?
Yeah, right. Just to twist their brains up.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm not even going to, let me rephrase that. I'm not going to throw in, it's dopamine. It's just pure dopamine. Where our generation, dopamine was, Atari 2600 or Nintendo.
Breakout, man, breakout.
Yeah, or cable TV. Like if you had cable TV, but you better hope something was on you wanted to watch. Now it's right, it's right here in there, right there for whenever they want, however they want, whatever they want. And I think that, the dopamine thing, and now I probably sound like an old fart, like, oh, back in my day, I didn't have to deal with that. I mean, I probably sound like that, but I do think the dopamine thing is a big deal.
I can't disagree with that. And I would also argue, though, that some of the older generations actually, I think, are more tech addicted than the children.
I read this stat the other day, Daren, about book like reading books, and it blew me away. Do you know what generation is the largest user of like Kindles and e-readers and things like that?
I would say millennials.
It's the boomers.
The boomers are, huh?
The boomers are. Do you know the fastest growing segment in paper books right now are millennials?
Well, that's what I was saying. That's so interesting.
Yeah, huh? Because there's a push right now, millennials, because so much of their existence has been digital. There's actually this kind of research or surgeons coming in with them that they want something old school, and they just, in a paper book provides that. It's crazy. But those are the numbers there.
So anecdotally, just to support that, I think the pillar's swinging.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was out in Montana this last week in Yellowstone and that whole area, and the number of Z's millennials that have vans, and not just dudes, ladies too, like just driving around in their van and wanting this like uber authentic life where they're just like connected to nature practically.
Right.
That's the push. And then we were fly fishing on the Madison River 2 days ago, and we're out there fly fishing, and you would think it would be old people. It wasn't. It was far more younger people my age out there fly fishing on the river, seeking these very connected ways, because I think the pillar is starting to swing. Like they grew up with this thing in their face, and they're like, this isn't rewarding. Whereas like the boomers didn't have that, and they're like, this is amazing, I'm going to keep this.
Yeah.
And then you got us Xers who are just caught in the middle, like, I don't know, I'm just going to go to work.
Yeah, we're just going to keep this thing afloat, guys. Go have fun, do what you need to do. We're gonna go ahead and keep this thing afloat. Well, it's kind of like the principle of like marginal returns in that, or whatever it is, where it's like you eat that first bowl of ice cream and it's amazing, but by the time you get, if you eat that 20th bowl of ice cream, you're like, no, I don't want any more of it. Where I'm wondering if boomers are just starting to enjoy that ice cream and go, wow, this is amazing. Where millennials are like, I'm on my 20th bowl here. I can't do this anymore. It's too much.
Yeah.
I bet that's probably what it is.
Well, if you think about it, like at least anecdotally, I would say that the people screaming for privacy are not the boomers. They're the millennials that have had their whole life just infiltrated. Right. And they're like, yeah, that Facebook thing? I don't think so. That's grandma on Facebook.
Right.
And so it's kind of interesting. But so let's pull this back into the work environment. How does this show up at Parallel Financial for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, again, so we start, first of all, we got to figure out compensation wise what makes sense, like what is going to incentivize our people to do what they need to do compensation wise. Then we need to find out, right, what are they wanting? Like, what are they wanting to be when they grow up, right? What are they wanting to learn? Who do they, because a lot of folks are starting with us maybe at entry level positions, but maybe they don't want to be there. What does that timeline look like? What are their expectations? We are finding out more and more, especially when you hire younger folks in, if you don't have a career path spelled, at least diagrammed out, like, okay, here's where you are today, and here's where you could be, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, and you don't have something, and it's tough when you're a small independent firm. It's not like you're this massive organization and there's all these different options they could go to. But if you don't have that, I guarantee you, right, you can just set the clock, because at some point they're going to jump. Like they're not going to keep doing that same job over and over and over and over again. So you better, and that's why I think growing and organic growth is so important, because as you grow and continue to grow, that's going to create opportunities for these folks. If you grab a good person, right, and you want to keep them, you're going to have something for them to go to. So that's the second thing, figuring out what that looks like for them. And then I would say the third thing would be just the actual work environment itself, right? And what we're discovering is folks want flexibility. And I'll just tell you what we do here. So our folks here work 9 to 4. And on Fridays, usually by 1 o'clock, if it's slow, especially in the summertime or whatever, they can head home. And people might be like, wow, you're paying them, they're not even working a 35-hour week or whatever. And I said, so what? They're getting their work done. Like, I care more about them getting their work done than them sitting here staring at a computer screen for 40 hours a week. And if they're getting done what they need to get done, by compressing that workday with them, when they come in, they're on it, and they go and they go and they go. And don't get me wrong, we have cocktail hours here. We're doing stuff. We order in a lot of food here. Like, we're still trying to do things also to make it bring in that fun element. But the idea is, by compressing it in, we give them flexibility in the morning. We give them flexibility after work. And we also, with our folks here, and I'm talking more on the support side. Obviously, when you're an advisor and you are, you're eating what you kill here, you can work from here home. You can kind of do whatever, but I'm talking about our support folks, right, mainly. We let them work from home 1 day a week. Sometimes even when they travel, like, hey, I got to go visit my folks for a week. We'll just say, we'll just work from there that week, and that way you don't have to take a vacation or whatever to go do that. I think that flexibility is so important with folks these days.
Yeah, there's such a tension between productivity, flexibility, and I've actually was very, very flexible early on, and I've gotten tighter and tighter just because, like, it became like, here's a mile and we'll take 15, and how do you balance that?
Yeah. So I think it's interesting you say that, because my business partner and I, we're kind of opposites on that. I'm the guy handing out flexibility left and right. And he's like, no, they're gonna take 10 miles, if you give them an inch. And so it's allowed us to kind of come to a happy medium and balance that out. But I would just say our expectations are there, and we're very, very clear about what we're expecting from them. And one of the things that we are always doing is we are always hiring. We always have job postings on LinkedIn at all times. We're always interviewing people. And it's not that people have this fear of getting replaced, but as a business owner, I don't have the fear of keeping an unproductive, bad employee. Like, I don't have that fear of like, well, they're still getting this done. Because we've all been through it. We're like, well, they're still doing this, they're still doing that. And, gosh, I got to go find someone else, and then I got to train them up again, or things like that. We're always keeping that bench active. And it's not that it's not a fear thing. It's just, I want to, hey, we're going to give you flexibility, but you got your, but I also have the flexibility that if you're not holding up your end of the commitment, we got a bench here we can always go to.
Yeah, I love one of our colleagues, a guy named Tommy Martin, says we're always green lighting. And I've really found that to be true. Like, you just always have to be green lighting. Who's your talent pool? What's that talent pool? Where do you got to reach? I don't know if you saw this article yesterday, it came out, but I'm sure there's more to the headline than what I read. But UPS drivers just negotiated a $170,000 a year salary for a UPS driver. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm thinking about our businesses and how that impacts all the way down. And like, you think about sustainability and financial sustainability. So if you go to like, what we're seeing is kind of this vortex, this really kind of critical moment in history where it's the cross between inflation's pushed comp up, career tracking. You have all these different people who see things differently in the workplace. And then you've got to get the culture right, because the culture is what's going to stick them and they're going to stay with you. It's really a challenge.
Yeah, it absolutely is a challenge. Like, we made a hire a couple of years ago, and where we made that hire, we had to give everybody else a raise, because it was clear that the market had changed. And for us to bring this person in, who's been a great person for us, we had to go give everybody else a bump and like, out of cycle, out of everything, everyone got a bump. Yeah. And, but that was the only way we can make it work. But hey, I'm going to read this to you on the UPS thing, because I think it's important because I think there's a lot of advisors out there that don't understand the cost of labor right now. And they probably go, Buc-ee's, right? You've heard of Buc-ee's, the big famous gas station. Do you want to know what general manager, salary range, 100 to 150,000. The car wash manager just manages the car wash of the Buc-ee's, 125K. And by the way, you can't see this. This is from an actual Buc-ee's sign in a store that I'm reading this from if someone texted me. The general manager of a Buc-ee's makes $150,000 to $225,000 a year.
Geez.
Okay. So like when we talk about salaries and things like that, but here's the again, and this gets back to the culture thing. Salary doesn't always motivate like you think it does. And this is why I think you're more of an Xer, because we spend like, I'm motivated by money. You're motivated by money. And I think our generation tends to be. People need to pay the bills and feel good about it, but it's not always money that motivates them, which I've found. Like there's other things that mean a lot and probably mean a lot more. And this, again, I'll project onto my team and say, well, everybody cares about money. Let's just figure out about money. There's a lot of other things out there, and it's figuring out what those things are and making it, important.
I think it was Dan Heath, and this is a great space just to close us off for today.
Sure.
But I think Dan Heath did the research, and he's got a great YouTube out there floating around, an animated video. I think salary is actually number 3 of the carrots.
Yeah.
And creating a great work environment is pivotal. And that's why we're doing these podcasts, is just to really talk to advisors, for advisors. How do we think about how we shape and run our businesses? Because there's a lot of pressure on individual leaders out there, right, in trying to shape and lead successfully in this environment for all the reasons we've just talked about. Brian, really appreciate you being with us today and taking the time to share a little bit window into your world, and appreciate your partnership and mentorship along the way.
Daren, thank you. I'm honored to be here, and I have so much respect for you and all the things that you do. And so thanks for having me on. It means a lot. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Brian.
Take your next step in leadership. Go to leadyourfirm.com for more practical lessons in leadership for RIAs. Find the book, Clarity, at leadyourfirm.com and Amazon. Subscribe now to catch future episodes of the Lead Your Firm podcast. This podcast is a production of Fermata Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor, headquartered in Sonoma, California. Contents are for information purposes only. Nothing herein amounts to investment advice or an offer to buy or sell securities. Fermata Advisors does not provide tax or legal advice. Thank you for listening to the end. True leaders read the fine print. See you next episode.